Running a business brings a lot of challenges. Picking the right path is always tricky. Do you know what independent optometry will look like in the future? The Hakim Group partnered with Optometry Today to find out where 5 successful practice owners think independent optometry and their businesses will be in 2030 and beyond. First, we wanted to know what they think the biggest challenge facing the independent sector in the next decade will be.
I think the biggest single challenge is perceiving a limitation to our horizon. This whole pandemic has given us the opportunity to change the way we approach things.
I think it's going to swing more clinical again. I think with the aging population, I think we're going to see a big shift of to kind of more shared care and patients being kept within primary care.
There's enormous pressure on change of education. There are very many invested people in education that are pushing towards simplifying becoming an optometrist.
The majority of independents are trying to compete on a multiple level, and they're not going to manage it. There's absolutely no capability in a single practice to match the buying power.
I don't see much of a future for a solo independent practice. When you look at the Hakim Group, the value, the cultures, the profitability of the model, for me, I see that that's the choice for independent practices.
How do you think technology will look in the next decade?
Technology needs to become more intuitive and faster. That will aid with all our teams, because sometimes they can be caught up where the computer says no, and their time is going into that, where their time should really be focused on the patient journey. The optometrist needs everything to be moving much, much smoother in the test room.
I think as examination techniques and technology moves on, okay, we may lose a little bit of refraction, but let's be honest, we can probably do that within a few minutes of a known patient with very few changes. That's where we then spend our time kind of really conversing with the patient and giving them full education about what's going on.
I think within the next 5 years, there will be pretty much wholesale deregulation of refraction. What I do see is resegmentation of the roles within the practice. So it may well be that as an optometrist, I will end up seeing the patient for 20 minutes, not 40, but the patient will be in the practice for the other 40. I just collate the information together and we make the final decision.
Having AI to help us interpret the screens that we do achieve is obviously going to help as well.
I would hope that technologies and AI would come to that point that we could run digitally remote clinics.
Are there any regulatory hurdles that we might stumble across in the future?
One of the concerns I have that I think optometry has not properly understood and embraced is the concept of Montgomery consent. Montgomery consent is where the initiating referrer has an obligation towards what the end stage outcome might be. Now, it used to be that we would refer somebody, and if there was a problem, the buck stops with them. Where that may not be applicable in cataract work, for example, is somebody who may potentially benefit from a toric lens implant or a multifocal or an EDOF lens implant, and you're not mentioning it to them. You know, one day it might bite us.
There's a lot of things going forward that might bite us. If we don't mention myopia management to a parent of a 2-year-old who becomes a leading barrister going forward, but -10 with a macular drop.
The way myopia management's been brought in across a lot of the independent sector, and certainly within our group, is to view it as a monthly service-based approach.
The recurring revenue streams is something that we're absolutely exploring and has kept us afloat during these weird, wonderful times. Moving towards more of a subscription-based eye care plan, I think, is absolutely the way forwards.
The model of conventional retail practice doesn't really lend itself to that. I think it would be difficult.
The whole point of being independent is that you're agile, you can be resourceful, you can do all these things quickly and think on your feet. You're not bound by the big corporate anchors.
That will be driven by appropriate funding, whether it comes from our patients funding us using it or whether anyone else is going to pay us a sufficient amount of money.
The GOS has been not fit for purpose for proper full examinations for a very, very long time.
We're constantly told there's no money around. Well, the NHS has spent and continues to spend more than it's ever spent. I just think one of the tragedies is we've never got any of it.
I've been on, LOC committees and stuff for many years, and it is like shoving a pea uphill with your nose, trying to negotiate with CCGs who don't get it. They just don't understand how much of an advantage we can offer the secondary care.
Do you see audiology being a part of the future of independent practice?
We've been working with Amplify now for years. We do really well. We've seen obviously year-on-year growth, and the cross-fertilization is fantastic. Looking kind of post-COVID, we've started moving into more kind of a subscription-based model, and we're kind of tying audiology in with that as well. And again, that's working really well. And I think more and more people will do that. Speaking to the guys from Amplify before, and something like that, over the next 10 years, we're expecting kind of a 50% increase in people with hearing problems.
Will there be any differences in the path into optometry come 2030? Will the university experience be the same as it is now?
So I'm not convinced that carrying on with anything like the system we've got at the moment is good enough. I would like to see a stepwise process whereby you qualify at one level, but then you just go seamlessly on to graduate with your IP at the 5th year level, for example.
Without IP in the practice, I don't think it would be surviving as well. And if it was taught in university, then the whole optometry profession would be in a better place.
How will independent optometry compete with the multiples as business becomes ever more online?
I don't see the online being as much of a threat as it might be to other sectors, of retail. Patients still like that touch and feel, that they like to have them fitted. And that's not to say that people won't go online and that we'll develop a relationship with them before they come through our door. And I definitely think even through the patient journey that the touch points and the way they might be able to track it will change with technology and when they leave. But I do think that we need to be very, very good at it.
It's always been one of my kind of mantras is to basically differentiate yourself. If you compete on price alone with big boys, you're going to lose.
I think we all need to be invested in customer service. We need to be very savvy on the patient journey, how we are connecting with patients.
In 2030, we will still be people-centric. Services attitude of the team and of the practitioner and the front of house. They're not receptionists, they're front of house. It's the same as the maitre d' in a restaurant.
We are very people-centered and we train people. And it is all around about having the right team that you can deliver that journey and that connection for our patients.
People are staying more local and it's up to us then to keep these patients and to show them what we're capable of. And listen, guys, you don't need to go back to the multiples in town and stuff. Look what we can do. And one of the things I found really frustrating and found myself kicking myself about is the fact that it's taken a virus to kind of change the way that we look at our business sometimes. As independent practice, constantly revisit and revamp what we do. To make sure it's the best possible service for our patients.
All of your practices are part of the Hakim Group. Do you think that this will help your businesses flourish come 2030?
The biggest difference on the future is that we are supported with the stuff that we're not really qualified and trained in, which is marketing, IT, digital, and that we can then bring our focus back into the clinical side of things and the people.
What's changed for me under the umbrella of the group is that my focus is much more 100% on the person in front of me. You'd come out from a consulting room, you're about to do a handover to a dispense, and you've got a question about, if Emily's self-isolating for this, does that mean Laura has to take another day's holiday? These are operational matters that have no relevance to me and the patient in front of me. And the simple answer is phone HQ.
You've dumped all the boring stuff.
Some of it's not boring. Some of the business stuff's really exciting. I now have time to do that, but I don't do it in between. I don't manage from firefight operational issues in between patients.